Good evening. At this time, I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission meeting of December 5th, 2022. For viewers watching at home, some members of the public may be participating via video conference or teleconference. I ask now that you please join me and stand to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner Buss?
Present.
Commissioner Lanson?
Here.
Commissioner Link?
Here.
Commissioner McMahon?
Here.
Chair Newman?
Here. And tonight we have with us Deputy Community Development Director John Dugan. Mr. Dugan, are there any written comments, announcements, or continuances?
No, Mr. Chairman, there are no supplemental packages or any kind of written correspondence for tonight's case.
Thank you. We would normally move to public comments at this time, but I understand there are none this evening. So we will move right along to our consent calendar. Are there any comments or a motion from my fellow commissioners? Commissioner Link.
I noticed there was an inside note asking if, I believe that was if our planner,
Yes.
senior planner.
I believe our secretary has a comment.
Yes, my apologies. We have to remove the last sentence of the roll call. It was a note to staff. Thank you.
So
Okay.
move to approve with that change.
Thank you for noting that, and thank you for your motion. Is there any discussion? Very good. Will the secretary please prepare us for a vote?
Commissioner Buss?
Aye.
Commissioner Lanson?
Aye.
Commissioner Link?
Aye.
Commissioner McMahon?
Aye.
Chair Newman?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. And we have one public hearing this evening, and I will ask the secretary, please, to open the public hearing.
Hearing having been advertised as required by law is open to consider Agenda Item 7A, Municipal Code Amendment MCA 2020-70180, to consider amending Article 21 of Chapter 4 of Title 9, Permitted Use Matrix Residential Zones, to allow a columbarium as an ancillary use to a permitted religious facility, subject to approval of a special use permit. This project qualifies as exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act CEQA guidelines under Section 15061B3 Common Sense Exemption. Located citywide, the applicant is Holy Trinity Lutheran Church.
Thank you. Presenting for staff this evening is Assistant Planner Tabitha McAtee, and also available for questions only are Mr. Dugan and Senior Planner Scott Colwitz. Ms. McAtee, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Chair Newman and members of the Planning Commission. The case before you tonight is a request to find that the Municipal Code Amendment is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines under Section 15061B3 Common Sense Exemption, and to recommend that the City Council amends Thousand Oaks Municipal Code, Title 9, Chapter 4, Article 2, Definitions to add columbarium, and Article 21, Permitted Use Matrix Residential Zones, to allow a columbarium as an ancillary use to a permitted religious facility, subject to conditions and approval of a special use permit. The Thousand Oaks Municipal Code, Section 9-4.2914A, requires that the Planning Commission provide a recommendation to City Council for the proposed amendments to the provisions of Chapter 4 of Title 9 of the Municipal Code. This request was filed by the applicant, Holy Trinity Lutheran Church. This is a map showing their religious facility's location which is south of Olson Road, north of Avenida de las Arboles, and west of Moore Park Road. And this is an aerial view of the applicant's religious facility located at 1 West Avenida de las Arboles in the Rural Exclusive Zone, or the RE Zone. On March 5th, 2020, Holy Trinity Lutheran Church applied for MCA 2020-70180 to allow columbaria in the residential zone's permitted use matrix of the municipal code. A columbarium is a structure in the form of a small building or wall containing niches or single compartments designed to store the cremated remains of a deceased person within an urn or enclosed vase. The walls can be located within a mausoleum building containing crypts and/or tombs within a cemetery or religious facility. And the cities of Westlake Village, Camarillo, Simi Valley, Oxnard, and Ventura all have cemeteries and/or religious facilities containing columbaria. And here are some photo examples of various columbaria. In September 1964, the community voted to incorporate the city of Thousand Oaks from an unincorporated county of Ventura area. In October 1964, City Council adopted the Ventura County Ordinance Code as a temporary interim zoning ordinance. And in April 2011, City Council adopted an ordinance amending sections of the municipal code, including Title IX Planning and Zoning, regarding the findings of approval of a special use permit. Cemeteries, mausoleums, and columbaria were included in the list of uses allowed under the Planning and Zoning amendments in 2011. Columbarium use is only currently allowed in the light manufacturing zone, or the M2 zone, as a permitted institutional use with the approval of a special use permit by the Planning Commission. There are currently no permitted columbarium structures in the city at this time. And neither of the original zoning ordinance adopted by the County of Ventura nor the MCA 2010-70418 amendments allowed columbaria in residential zones. On April 12th, 2022, City Council initiated MCA 2020-70180, declaring the intention to consider a columbarium use ancillary to a permitted religious facility within a residential zone, and new development standards, processes, and findings for columbarium installations. This request would allow for columbaria as an ancillary use within an approved place of worship through a special use permit application. Currently, there are 44 places of worship or religious facilities located within the city's limits. 34 of them are located within residential zones, and the remaining 10 within the city's limits are located in commercial, industrial, and public or institutional zones. The city's current regulations for places of worship or religious facilities are contained in the residential zones permitted use matrix of the Thousand Oaks Municipal Code, Section 9-4.2104, under institutional and civic uses. This map shows where religious facilities are currently located in residential zones within the city's jurisdiction, including the applicant's Holy Trinity Lutheran Church, located toward the top of the map. And this slide shows the existing residential use matrix under institutional and civic uses in the municipal code. The shaded area towards the bottom of the screen shows the proposed row that would be added to the matrix under places of worship or religious facilities. The required entitlement type for a proposed columbarium ancillary to a permitted religious facility would be a special use permit to be reviewed by the Planning Commission. And this slide shows the proposed development standards for a columbarium structure that would be listed at the end of Section 9-4 24.2106 for limitations on specific uses. And I have highlighted the main design standards for you, and these are similar to what is currently allowed for accessory structures. Columbarium structures shall be accessory to a permitted religious facility and shall be located behind the main religious facility building with a minimum setback of 100 feet from the property line, and they shall not exceed 600 square feet, and they should not exceed 15 feet in height. And the remains kept within the columbarium structures are required to be transferred to another off-site facility if the religious facility ceases its operations. The municipal code amendment is exempt from the provisions of CEQA pursuant to California Government Code Section 15061B3. CEQA applies only to projects which have the potential of causing a significant effect on the environment, where it can be seen with a certainty that there are no possibility that the activity in question may have a significant effect on the environment. The activity is not subject to CEQA. The proposed MCA will restrict the construction of a new columbarium ancillary to a religious facility subject to a future discretionary permit entitlement. And the potential impacts related to operations of a columbarium use columbarium use within a place of worship would be addressed through a special use permit process and subject to a separate project-specific environmental review. In conclusion, columbaria are typically allowed in conjunction with places of worship or cemeteries in other local jurisdictions. Places of worship are allowed in residential zones where the majority of cities' religious facilities are located. The project will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or general welfare and is consistent with the Thousand Oaks General Plan. And the potential impacts related to operations of a columbarium use within a place of worship would be addressed through the special use process. It is recommended that the Planning Commission adopt the draft resolution to recommend City Council to find the MCA is exempt from the provisions of CEQA and to approve this municipal code amendment as outlined in the ordinance included in today's agenda packet. And the next step for this case would be for City Council to review the MCA request and to take final action. If approved, the applicant will file a special use permit for a columbarium as an ancillary use to their existing religious facility. The special use permit application will be evaluated for compliance with all city standards, including operations and any proposed site improvements. And I do have one correction to attachment number 2 for tonight's agenda packet, and that is number 5 listed under section 9-4.2106FF of the proposed ordinance. That should be deleted, and that was a carryover from a previous code section that does not apply to this request. So number 5 here on the development standards slide. And this concludes my presentation. Staff, as well as the applicant, Pastor Eric Gaynor from Holy Trinity Lutheran Church, are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there questions of Commissioner Buzz?
Thank you very much for that presentation. I just have a couple of quick questions. One, did staff get input from all 44 religious organizations or just the one that's been applying?
We did send them the notice, both the notice of application and the notice of hearing, and we have all 44 places of worship listed.
And
We
did
didn't
they-
get any.
No response at all?
No responses.
Okay, because I was just curious if any other of the religious groups had mentioned they had other funerary rites that may come under our purview at some point, but that's not the case.
No.
And you know what, that answers all my questions then. Thank you.
Commissioner Lanson.
Thank you, Chair Newman. Just so kind of an understanding here, the applicant is listed as the church, but it seems as if we're doing a code amendment, isn't it really the city in that sense?
So the applicant is the church, but the church has requested a municipal code amendment that does impact this particular section, would apply to all religious institutions throughout the city. As noted in the staff report there, if this is approved by the city council ultimately, the expectation would be that this particular church would be submitting an additional SUP for the planning commission's future consideration. That project is not before you today. This is just
And
the
that,
code.
you kind of lead to the next question I had, is that individual residents did not get notice of the fact that this would be going forward because they actually haven't submitted their application yet.
That is accurate.
Okay, so that we're just looking at the CEQA issue and whether the code amendment issue would go forward.
Correct.
And you indicated that you sent something to the other churches in the area. Is that just to put them on notice of the fact that this hearing was taking place?
Yes, that was for the municipal code amendment. Both the notice of application and the notice of hearing went to all 44 places of worship.
Okay, and just for my own edification, how many urns does this columbarium hold?
They would vary, and we would review them case by case. Anytime that a place of worship would come in with a columbarium request, we would have a separate special use permit.
And these would be permanent in terms of them being interred in that columbarium. They wouldn't be removed except in the event the place went out of business or something.
I believe that's something that can be deferred to the applicant. I'm not sure if they're permanent or if they can be removed, but we do have a plan for churches to make sure that they have a place for these remains to be transferred if the operations were no longer
Understood.
in place.
I have no further questions.
If I may, Chair.
Mr. Heer.
Just to clarify also, when this application first came in, typically we bring it to City Council and we request that they can process it concurrently. Many times, the applicant does take that risk and follows up with a permit or a process for their application for their SUP concurrently with this process, with the risk being that if the ordinance isn't changed, then their permit's going to be denied, obviously, right? In this particular case, the applicant decided not to go forward with the actual SUP part, even though they were offered by City Council to give them that option. So that's why it's a little bit different, because typically they come together, but in this case, they did not.
Commissioner McMahon.
Yes, hi. On addendum number 2, number 1, where it says the structures, the setback of 100 feet from the property line along the street frontage and no closer to the rear and side property lines as the main buildings. It's probably because I'm a layperson, but that's very confusing to me. If you're going to add a little ancillary building and it can't be closer, how are you going to add the building and it not be closer than the main building on either side? Help me understand that, please.
We're bringing up the aerial photograph of this property to help explain some of the site planning questions.
Okay, so this is the aerial view. We would be measuring from the center line of both Avenida de los Arboles and the side street on the other side of the religious facility, 100 feet per side. So it would be located in the rear of the property behind the main church, which is in the corner of the two streets, if that makes sense.
If I may, are you suggesting there would be a sort of intersection of a 100-foot line north of Arbalest and a 100-foot line west of the side street. And the facility could be no further east or south of that point?
Yes, that would be true if it's measured from the street.
Mr. Chairman, maybe
Sorry,
just to
can you-
clarify a little further, basically the idea here is not to allow the ancillary use of the columbarium to be in the front yard of the church or the side yards of the church. It could only be in the backyard.
And the wording in my mind doesn't say that.
Well, that's basically what, I guess in planarese it comes out that way, but
Okay.
keeping the existing front yard and the existing side yards is what
Okay, but,
it means.
okay, I'm not going to belabor the point. It just seems like it doesn't allow it to go beyond the back of the main buildings, which is where you want it.
It does.
Yeah, it could,
It could.
as long as it met the rear yard setback requirement, which would be 20 feet normally.
Okay,
So
All right.
between the back of the building and 20 feet from the property line in the rear, it would fit there.
okay, that's my only question.
Very good. Are there other commissioner comments, questions?
I'm going to pile in on this. I'm equally as confused about the next clause, which is no closer to the rear and side property lines as the main buildings. So
That's the clause that
I-
confounds me.
would it just be easier to just create a minimum setback from the rear and side property lines as opposed to establishing a nebulous measure? Because even based on that project site or the Lutheran Church project site, there could be multiple locations where a building setback could be. So which one do you pick?
I'm sorry, not yet. We will come to you in a moment, but we hear from staff first and then the applicant.
To our commissioners, McMahon and Link, if the planning commission has alternate language for us to include, we certainly could do that, so it's something more typical of the particular zones. That is something that the planning commission can do. We see your points as you're bringing them up at this point in time.
That would make it much more clear to me. This wording is hard for me.
And just to add into that, because I think that if I'm understanding it correctly, especially with this property site, that vacant area could not be used because an existing building is not far enough set back for them to use that area. If that's the way I'm reading that. So maybe if it,
I'm not sure our mobile TOTV crew
no, nobody saw me with the screen, so.
picked that up, but you were gesturing toward the rear of the property, and I think trying to indicate what the setbacks could be or should be.
Correct. Well, I mean, if I'm reading it based on so no closer to the rear and side property lines as the main buildings. So if we're going to call that most northwesterly building as the main setback, then the area that is currently undeveloped that is to the southwest of that building could not be developed because of that building to the northeast would be the furthest setback if we're calling that a main building.
And perhaps the solution here, trying to get with the intent, our Deputy Director Dugan, I think, stated correctly that the intent is trying to not have these columbarium be essentially proud of the building itself. So retaining the first portion of the standards, the 100 feet back from property along the street frontage, and then essentially what I'm hearing at least two members of the Planning Commission question is, should the regular side and rear standards, the regular side and rear setback standards apply to the rest of the property? That seems to be the questions that are being asked here.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yes.
So if I may, Chair, maybe the solution then is if this body were to move this project forward with a recommendation as requested by staff, staff before it brings it to City Council would again review the ordinance and see if there's any clarity that could be added to, again, make it easier for the reader to understand what the purpose is and what the requirements are as far as setbacks. Does that make sense to staff? All right.
Yes, it does.
Yes, thank you.
Excuse me. Is there any reason why
Commissioner
we...
McMahon.
I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Is there any reason why we couldn't come up with a setback before we voted on it?
Sure. I mean, I think if we're going to use the standard 20-foot setback, and from the side, I don't know what your thought process is for that, but if you want to change that to add a setback that's specific, we can do that as well.
Yes, we can use the existing rear and side setbacks that we typically allow for residential zones, which would be 20 feet from the rear and then 5 feet from the side. And also the RO, which is the single-family estate zone, is a 35-foot setback, so it's more than the 20-foot. So we'll add that.
All set?
I just had
Yes.
one more clarifying question, and I think Commissioner Buss has one, but, and then just to make doubly sure, 5 is completely stricken from the proposed ordinance.
I'm sorry, that what is? Yeah, point 5 is.
Yeah, paragraph 5, columbarium structures shall be permissible only on lots legally created, et cetera, et cetera. That's
Yeah,
completely gone.
That's correct.
Completely gone. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dugan indicated that. I have a couple of questions, and I'll come back to you in just a moment. I think there are other parts of the code that set general requirements for setbacks for specific zones. I agree with the commissioner's comments that it would be helpful to explicitly name those limits in this amendment. But just so I'm clear on what they are, I think our intent here, and correct me if any of this is wrong, I think our intent is to be 100 feet, or no less than 100 feet north of Arbalest, no less than 100 feet west of Mount Clef, and no less than 35 feet off the rear line of the property. And I'm not clear on whether it's the west or the north boundary as the rear, but
So the 35-foot setback is actually for a different zone.
okay.
All of the residential zones besides that one is 20-foot setback.
Okay,
for
so
the
it'd be
rear.
20 feet.
Yes.
Okay, and which line are we considering, which lot line are we considering the rear? The western boundary or the northern one?
It would be the northern.
Okay, and then the western boundary would be a side boundary?
Yes,
And what would the limit there be?
it would be 5 feet.
5 feet?
Yes.
Okay. So I think just, so there are 4 numbers there, 100, 100, 20, and 5. And I think for clarity's sake, I think there can be no confusion if the amendment enumerates those 4 numbers. I think that would help resolve this. So that's, I guess, a comment, not a question. The other is a question. At the end of attachment 2, this is a legal document saying that it's been passed. This is really just a process question. It's been passed on such and such date in 2022 and signed by the current mayor. And since my understanding is this will not be enacted by the city council until 2023 with a different mayor, that this language will be modified at that time. Is that correct?
Yes. The initiation went through earlier this year, and this is now step 2 of the process. And then step 3 will be when the city council has to look at it again and take final action. So it will be a different mayor.
Okay, so
In
in our
2023,
voting
sorry.
to approve this, we would be voting on this with the understanding that this language is subject to change.
Yes, we can change it before it gets presented to city council again.
Okay. It is a recommendation but it would be subject to change.
Yes.
Okay, and then I think Commissioner Buss had an additional question?
Yeah, I'm going to go back and actually ask my question since we started talking about footages. I was asking because I don't understand why we have a 100-foot setback, to be honest. Was that a request specifically, or is that some kind of a decorum thing, or what is the city's interest in determining where they place it on their property?
It's currently in our industrial zoning standards in the code, so that's where it came from.
So we have the same policy for anything in an industrial, so we're just carrying those over?
Yes,
Oh,
and
okay.
the intent for staff was to make sure that they're just not located close to the main streets, and that it was also located behind the main structure, which
Okay,
is the
so that's
main-
just been tradition since the city was founded. Okay.
I'm sorry, what was that?
That's just been tradition since
Yes.
the city adopted these codes. All right, thank you.
Commissioners, are there any other questions of staff before we go to our applicant? Okay. At this time, I'd like to call up our applicant, Pastor Eric Gunner. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. We ask for the record that you state your name and city of residence, and you have up to 15 minutes. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for letting me be here tonight. My name is Eric Gaynor. I'm a resident here in Thousand Oaks, California. Just brief, I wanted to explain kind of why we're asking for this. Why do churches do columbariums in the first place? I realize it's kind of a strange word and not necessarily something everybody's familiar with. So you might think about, this is a tradition going back into ancient times, actually. And you can think about even just in our own country, some of our founding fathers and most famous patriots are buried near churches in places like Boston, Massachusetts. And if you travel then west across the U.S., you'll see small country churches, and often next to them there'll be a cemetery. And that really comes out of our faith tradition with the idea that faith is something that covers a person from cradle to the grave, and the church is there to minister to people from their baptism to their burial. So that's really the tradition that we're coming from, and the theology, you might say, to make the structure on our property. Having the resting place near the church also allows members to visit when they come to worship. They may not travel very often to be a cemetery because it's farther away, but if they're coming to church, they can stop, meditate, pray with their loved one before or after worship, and it's a very convenient location to have that connection, you might say, spiritually. And again, we have this sense in our tradition that we are connected to what we call the communion of saints. And what that means is there's a spiritual tradition of those who come before us and those who come after us. So again, having a location of a resting place of remains next to a faith community is a way to kind of, in a spiritual sense, keep that connection with all the saints who've come before us. So that's some of the religious reasons why we want to pursue this project. Now, some of the practical reasons are because it came from one of our church members. We were at a church meeting, and there was a time at the end of our congregational meetings for people to bring up any concerns they might have, similar to what a city council does or even a planning commission. And a member raised their hand and said, "Hey, could we do a columbarium?" And we were like, "Well, what's a columbarium?" So they began to explain it to the congregation, and he and his wife had helped start one at a previous Lutheran church where they were in North Carolina. And we're very interested in the idea of having their resting remains be near a church. And because they're not members of our church, they were wanting to pursue this. And so it kind of just came spontaneously from that comment, and people in the same meeting really liked the idea and asked our church council to begin to pursue it. And that was 5-6 years ago. That person, unfortunately, has since passed away, and his wife was very disappointed that we hadn't yet gotten off the ground with the project. And we said, well, the city isn't zoned for that, and there's a lot of application processes that goes with this. We can't just do it overnight. And so that's kind of how it all began. And as we began to get in the process pre-COVID, we actually, I think it was $4,000, to get the application in to begin. And I think things kind of got lost in the shuffle during COVID time. And Tabitha graciously called us up. She was going through files and trying to update them and said, "Are you still interested in this?" And so we again did a kind of a survey of the congregation and a meeting to make sure there was still interest in this, and there was, and so we continued to pursue it, which leads us now to this point in time, where we actually got the initial approval from the City Council to pursue this code amendment. I have been to churches in Camarillo, Episcopal Church, who has a columbarium actually inside their church building. I went to another funeral at a Lutheran church in Santa Maria, California, and they have a landscaped area with a columbarium, which is very similar to, I think, the kind we would like to pursue. It's a more kind of almost like a cylinder type shape, sort of like a large pillar, and it can come in like a hexagonal or octagonal kind of shape with lots of many urns, ranging from, it can be anywhere from 80 to up to, a couple hundred, depending on how big it is. Our little task force has since gone to other Lutheran churches in the Los Angeles area as well, to see what kind of, columbariums they have in their locations. And just a year ago, one of our members who passed away, her family brought her to be with her husband to a columbarium at a Lutheran church in Fresno. So there are many Lutheran churches and actually Presbyterian Catholic churches who have these already in their locations across the U.S. and here in California. So this isn't a new thing for churches to be doing. It's just new for us here in Thousand Oaks. Cremation is becoming more and more popular. In-the-ground burial is very expensive, and people who are concerned about their footprint as well in terms of the environment are looking more to cremation. And in fact, studies are showing that if trends continue, nearly 70% of Americans are expected to choose cremation by the year 2030. So I raise that up because there's a growing need for places like columbariums where people can have, again, a smaller footprint, a resting place for the remains, cremated remains, but at the same time still have a physical location where they can go and know the loved one is resting there and have a sense of connection with them and a presence there with them. And as I mentioned, the expense of in-ground burial is something people are becoming more and more aware of. Average in-ground burial is anywhere from $8,000 up to $15,000. Columbariums are in the range of more like $1,000 to maybe $4,000 at the most. So that's a very important and appealing aspect of having this ministry as a part of our church for our church members. As I mentioned, we found this idea is not appealing only to our long-term church members. You might assume someone who wants to be buried near a church has been a member there for 40 years or so, and we have members like that. But we also have seen a lot of interest in newer members who come to us from all different places around the U.S., who have come to Thousand Oaks because it's a beautiful place to retire and to live in your last days. We have lots of connections with University Village and the Reserve, which are retirement homes near our congregation. And those members, too, have expressed interest in this because they might not have, they maybe have moved a lot for their work or different reasons. They don't have those long-term ties to maybe where they were born years ago. And we're kind of the last place where they're living, we're the last faith community they're connected with. And they're very interested in having a place where they can, again, make it easy for their loved ones to tell them, look, I'm buried here at the church. I was a member there before I passed away. And it's a very easy process for them and still be connected to a faith community. As staff sort of already mentioned, the idea of many other faith communities in our area might be interested in this. We did do a little bit of calling around. We were trying to get some other folks to kind of go in with us in this process and help pay for some application, that kind of thing. And there was one church in particular who showed interest, and they weren't ready to quite fully commit to the time and energy and finances to the process. But they said if we did come to the city and this went through, they'd be very interested perhaps in also pursuing it in their location. So this new code amendment would not necessarily just benefit our location, but in the future, it might benefit other faith communities who are hoping to pursue something similar and then wouldn't have to go through the whole amendment process, could just go through the special use permit process. As I mentioned, we're working with a company out of Minnesota who's been in operation since 1983. It's a family-owned company. They have a long track record with many different churches and cemeteries across the U.S., including churches from our own Lutheran denomination. And one of the things that appealed to us about their particular company as well is that they actually have an option to do prefabricated models, which makes the process a lot easier. We were talking to another company a couple of years back, and they were saying that they can kind of give you dimensions, but you have to then design your own kind of, wall-type columbarium. And that would involve, maybe hiring an architect, and it'd be more extensive legwork for us as a congregation. So this particular company actually has a prefabricated, kind of the cylinder-type models that I was talking about. And that was more appealing to us because you can just tell them, here's the color we like, here's the design we like. They make the whole thing in their factory in Minnesota, and they ship it on a semi-truck over here. We have to rent a big crane, and then the only thing we have to do then is prepare the slab for it. So we do intend to create some landscaping, a cement slab for this, probably some benches. I could show you real quick where we're hoping to put it if it meets the setback requirements. If you want to put that slide back up real quick.
Really relevant.
Yeah, just to be clear, there will be a separate hearing for a permit once this is forward. As I understand it, the only topic we're considering tonight is the change to city law, but we will consider yeah. Okay. I don't object to seeing it. I just want to be clear on what we're.
Sure. Yeah,
we're
that was
here
explained to us, yes.
Yeah, I too am interested to see the.
Well, I was just overhearing the conversation, so I thought, I could point to them where we were hoping to put it.
I'd like to see that as well. And
Okay.
I thought the pictures of other columbaria were useful as well.
So show the site plan.
Okay.
Yeah, and if this all, proceeds through at a future meeting, we could show you sort of the exact pictures that were kind of the models we're hoping to look at.
Yes, exactly. Then that would be in scope for a SUP hearing.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, just briefly.
Oh, I'm sorry, I need to ask you to stay at the lectern. The issue is, it's not just us here in this room, we're also,
on Zoom.
you're on TV,
Okay,
on
sure.
TOTV, and the cameras are trained on you where you are. And
Okay.
unfortunately, we don't have someone to follow you around, so.
So if you look at the corner there of Arbalest and Mount Clef, down on the right-hand corner there, the bigger, it's just the roof there, that's our church sanctuary. So you'll see then there's some space, a little bit of greenery there, and then another building just above that. That's our church office. Oh, will the camera still catch me? Is that okay? Okay.
It's okay, I don't think the camera will, maybe they will, I don't know.
Okay.
There's audio.
So it's this location right here between these two buildings. So currently we have something there called our Bishop's Garden, in honor of two pastors who are also bishops in our denomination. And there's some roses and things that are already there, so it seemed like an appropriate place. So the question would be, do we fit this requirement coming off of Mount Clef or not?
Right.
But that would be our hope. And it would be like some landscaping here, a cement slab, and then a cylinder-type structure, no more than 8 feet high, probably. So is that kind of helpful in a visually to kind of get that?
We'll have a period for commissioner questions, and I'm sure there will be a few questions about this, but we just wanted to give you your full opportunity to give your presentation first.
So that's the big overview about how we kind of got here as a congregation and what our hopes are with this project. So if there's any further questions, I can.
I appreciate it. And first, Pastor, I want to apologize for butchering your name.
Oh, that's okay. It happens all the time.
Sorry. And with that, we will go now to commissioner questions. Are there questions of the applicant? Okay. Commissioner Lanson.
Thank you, Pastor, for forgiving him for that's a bad joke. Anyway, so I'm looking at it again from a planning commission standpoint in terms of use and disposal. So I don't mean to be potentially callous in terms of how I ask this, but I know there's a part of this where in the event the church no longer exists, they have to dispose of the remains. To the extent the church is still ongoing and these urns, these cremated remains are put in the wall, do they stay there permanently, or is there some kind of limitation as to how long they may be there?
Yeah, I mean, the intent is in perpetuity. Of course, life happens. So in the event that something might happen, the church could no longer function as an entity in Thousand Oaks. We're a part of a larger denomination, so we call it a synod. A synod is basically like a district, a geographical area, and so our synod office is located in Glendale. And we've talked to them as a part of this process, and they have actually an agreement with an Episcopal denomination as well, because they also have such structures and columbariums at their churches. That, and of course, if something happened, the synod then would take the remains and be responsible for bringing them to a new location.
All right, so just to clarity, so to your understanding, and again, I'm not asking you about your specific application because it's not here, but typically there's a one-time upfront fee that those cremated remains are put there, and whether or not the person still belongs to the church or leaves town or whatever, those stay there.
Oh, correct, yes.
Okay, so it's not based upon a monthly fee or something?
Oh, no, yeah. So one thing churches do to help fund projects like this is they'll do pre-sales, so we can get people to commit up front, and that helps us then fund the actual project as it goes forward. So that would be a one-time fee, again, probably in the range of $1,000 to $2,000.
Similar to essentially a cemetery plot, except you would be getting...
Exactly, correct.
Okay. And I think, when we go back to staff, the area that you were noting seemed to be somewhat within that 100 feet area that the code was specifically, and my understanding also is we're trying to set the law as to what would apply to everybody, not just your specific application, which I know is a little bit confusing. Mm-hmm. So we'll probably talk about that because your application isn't necessarily at issue at the moment. But I think that was all the questions I had.
Thank you. And that's a good point. I think there may be other questions about the applicability of the 100-foot rule. So I just want to remind all the commissioners that there is not a specific application before us this evening. So we're not here to decide if something is.
So there's the potential that we could approve this tonight. It could be approved by city council. They could come back at a later date, ask for their specific one, and then it could be denied. And I just find that ironic considering they're the ones paying for the hearing this evening.
So there are a couple of ways to go on that. One is, again, tonight, the question, the only question is, should the city law be changed to allow this? There is existing, in other parts of the city law, there are setbacks given for every type of zoning, including for places of worship in residential areas. And those setbacks are 100 feet. If that stays, and if, as we just agreed, there should be something explicitly saying 100 feet in this amendment, then I agree that it appears, I don't have a tape roll, but it appears that the location you were pointing to is less than 100 feet from Mount Clef. So I guess the question on that is, two-part question, are there alternative locations on site you would consider if it really is a 100 feet limit? And or would you be applying for a waiver of this new standard we just set?
How does the waiver process work?
Chair, if I may.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Mr.
obviously we are working with the city, you're right, we want to have good relations with the city, so whatever rule gets.
I don't want to get into
decided.
hypotheticals tonight because there's not a permit
Yeah.
application before us.
Yeah.
Mr. Heer.
Working with staff, I think we're going to try to present some new language to you tonight. I think that will solve the issue for Mr. Buss's concern and also for the concern that you just raised with the applicant. I think, I don't want to speak for staff and let them do that, but initially I think the plan was that we did not want it any closer to the frontage than what the main church was, and so we wanted this to be behind the facade of the initial frontage of the church, right, or the house of worship. So that's the main goal, is to have that happen. And so when we got into the numbers, of course, we're using it from standards. And so based on the questions that we received tonight, I think we're going to come up with some language that maybe we should present now, just so they have it in their minds as we present and ask questions to the applicant. If you could, staff, one of you.
Yes, with your suggestions, the first development standard should read, or would be very similar to, columbarium structures shall be accessory to a permitted religious facility and shall be located behind the main religious facility buildings and no closer to the rear and side property lines as allowed in the underlying zone district. So we would get rid of that 100 center line.
And Chair, I think that answers all council members, planning commissioners' questions tonight regarding the confusion, obviously, and also just so you have clarity from a person who's reading this. Any new applicant comes in and reads this and says, okay, now I know, pretty simplified, but we understand what those are. As far as what the underlying zone district says, that's very simple typically, and so we get that answer to them fairly quickly, so they got an idea of, I now understand where I can place this if we want it on our facility.
I concur. Commissioner McMahon?
I think that was really well put. I like that.
Thank you. Commissioner Link? Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant before we go back to staff? Pastor, thank you very much.
Yeah, I can just add to our intent is, we are conscious of the fact that, sightlines and visibility. So we would want to create some kind of hedge or fence or something that would sort of protect it from the direct city view and that kind of thing. So
Very good. And actually, while we have you, I should ask, this is a standard part of hearings like this. Again, there's not a specific hearing before us tonight, but my understanding, and I concur with Commissioner McMahon, that the wording as proposed, that this change would handle the setback issues. I think they would accommodate your intent as well. Would you agree with that? In terms of locating the columbarium where you're looking to?
yeah, I think so. I need to hear it again and defer to your wisdom on some of that technical. But I trust that language would, and again, there are other locations we could entertain. That was just sort of our
Right.
top
Right.
location. So if we could work it out, that would be very much appreciated.
Okay, very good. Again, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Am I needed here any more tonight, or should I sneak out, or is it okay? Should I
You're
stay?
welcome to stay as long as you like. We're going to discuss this a little more and then have a vote, but you're
Okay,
welcome.
maybe
You're
I'll stay a
welcome to
little bit
stay.
longer than for the vote. Okay,
Very good.
thank you.
Again, thanks. And with that, we go back to staff for additional comments, follow-up. I didn't ask if there were public speakers, but I didn't see any. Is that?
No.
Okay, there are no public speakers, so we do go back to staff.
No further comments, Chair. Thank you.
Very good. Are there any further questions of staff before I close the public hearing? Very well. Then I will close the public hearing and open the floor for a motion and/or discussion. Don't all go at once. Commissioner Buzz.
All right, I will lead off with I propose that we adopt the resolution that finds this municipal code amendment is exempt from the provisions of the California Environmental Equality Act pursuant to Government Section Code 15061B3, and approve the amendments to the municipal code as described in attachment 2 as edited during this meeting. Sufficient? And I just wanted to add in, I've always been a big fan of your church for a very weird reason. The stained glass out front has always reminded me of the transport vehicle in the movie Tron, and I can never get that out of my head when I'm sitting at that stop sign. I lived on that street in high school. I've skateboarded through there and ridden my bike through there, and I always see that every time I look up. And so thank you very much for being there.
Thank you, Commissioner Buzz, for the most interesting movie tie-in of the evening. Commissioner Lanson? No comments? No comments?
How do you
Commissioner-
follow that?
Right, right.
I don't so
I want to also recognize Holy Trinity for the very important work your church does in terms of feeding our homeless, in cooperation with many other houses of worship and many volunteers and social service agencies. But I know it's not before us tonight, but I want to say how much I appreciate the vital service you provide for some of our less fortunate neighbors. So thank you for that. And with that, I will ask the secretary to prepare us for a vote.
Commissioner Buss?
Aye.
Commissioner Lanson?
Aye.
Commissioner Link?
Aye.
Commissioner McMahon?
Aye.
Chair Newman?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Very good. And there is no appeal period on a recommendation by the Planning Commission to the council. Pastor Gaynor, again, thank you very much. We appreciate it. With that, we move to department reports. Do we have any this evening?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, a couple. The December 6th City Council meeting will have one consent calendar item on environmental consulting services for the Jan's Marketplace Environmental Impact Report. And the December 13th will be the City Council reorganization meeting. For item 10B, items on the upcoming Planning Commission schedule, there aren't any items scheduled for December 12th, so we plan to cancel the next meeting there. And on January 9th, the Planning Commission will have a public hearing regarding a zone change at 3020 Crescent Way.
Very good, thank you. This is the time for commission comments and/or AB 1234 reports. Do we have any comments from fellow commissioners? Commissioner Lanson.
Thank you, Chair Newman. I just want to thank all of those that ran for City Council, including our very own Vice Chair McMahon. It's obviously a huge sacrifice to give for your city, and thank you. And I want to congratulate Chair Newman for, at this point, looking like he's going to end up switching dioceses. It's going to be weird not having you around, to be honest with you. You've been such an integral part of this process, but I wish you well and thank you for all you've done for the city as part of the Planning Commission.
Thanks very much. Appreciate that. Are there other comments from commissioners? Well, I'll just add that I will miss coming here every couple of Mondays, and I think planning is such an important part of land use is such an important part of what we do for all of our residents, and I hope going forward that long tradition of excellent and very competent staff and planning and excellent and competent stewardship for all residents on commissioners' parts will continue. Thank you. Any other comments? Very good. Well, thank you all. This meeting, well, there is no meeting of December 12th, Mr. Dugan noted, and so I will adjourn this meeting to the next regular meeting, January 9th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Good night, Thousand Oaks.